The stars above Drellis Prime shimmered with cold indifference, casting a silvery glow over the royal spires of the matriarch's palace. But beneath the grandeur, hidden behind walls of tradition and shame, lived a secret the galaxy would rather forget. Princess Vealora, the only daughter of the sovereign house of Azara, had been deemed infertile. In a civilization where lineage was power and fertility a divine duty, Vealora's fate had been sealed before she was old enough to speak her first word. No suitor from the 12 systems had come forward, not even those from the outer moons. The moment her condition was announced, the royal offers stopped like a severed pulse. She was marked, pitted, discarded. And so she was kept out of sight, away from the grand halls and shimmering galactic balls. A shadow of royalty, a ghost in silken robes. Her life was a cycle of silence and ceremony, empty and aching. But that night, as the twin moons rose higher and the air grew cooler, something stirred that would change her destiny. A ship broke through the sky like a flame through dark velvet, angular, battered, and entirely unauthorized. Guards scrambled. Energy lances buzzed. The palace alarms shrieked. But inside the cockpit was no invader, no bounty hunter, no smug royal emissary. It was a human, ragged, bleeding, barely breathing, crashing through the atmosphere on a vessel held together by duct tape and desperation. His name was Elias Cade, former Earthfleet pilot, dishonorably discharged after refusing to bomb a civilian dome on Irix 7. He had wandered the fringes of the galaxy ever since, trading his skills for food, fuel, and fleeting moments of shelter. When he regained consciousness, it was not in a dungeon or prison cell. It was in a crystal-walled infirmary that smelled faintly of lavender and ozone. A cool towel lay across his brow, and beside him, eyes like dark nebulae and hair cascading like liquid night, stood Vealora. "You're not supposed to be here," she said softly, voice like music forgotten. He tried to sit up but winced. "Yeah, that makes two of us." She looked down at the old scar above his eye. "Why did you come here?" Elias coughed. "Didn't really mean to. Ship gave out. Galaxy's a big place with a whole lot of silence. I aimed for survival. Got luck instead." For days he healed. And during those days, Vealora visited. Sometimes in silence. Sometimes with questions. Sometimes just to watch him sleep. Like she was watching a storm she couldn't predict, but longed to understand. "You don't belong here," she told him one night, standing at the edge of the crystalline window. "And yet, I don't belong here either." Elias turned his head slowly. "You're a princess. How can you not belong?" "Because I am broken," she whispered, almost as if afraid the stars might hear. "They call it infertility, but what they mean is useless." Elias sat up then, ignoring the flare of pain in his side. "You are not useless. Don't let a planet full of rules define what you're worth." Her eyes shimmered, not from tears, but from something older, something buried. Hope. In the days that followed, he taught her how to laugh without shame. How to pilot a broken simulator she had always been too afraid to try. How to ask questions no one had dared answer. She, in return, showed him the beauty of starlit gardens that bloomed only once every decade. Told him of the ancient songs carved into the moonlight. Showed him what trust could feel like when it wasn't used as a weapon. But love is never left alone. Rumors spread. Her mother, the High Matriarch, summoned Vealora to the Tower of Verdicts. "He is a trespasser, an exile, a danger to our rule," the matriarch said, her voice like forged iron. "He is the only one who ever looked at me and saw more than a wound," Vealora replied, steady but shaking inside. The punishment was swift. Elias was to be sent to the border worlds in exile. Vealora was confined to her chambers. 100 guards at her door. 1,000 miles between a heartbeat and the one it longed for. But neither Elias nor Vealora were the kind to surrender. As he was being marched to the hangar bay, flanked by guards in golden armor, Elias caught a glimpse of her standing at the tower window. Just a flicker of her silhouette against the rising sun. And in that moment, he knew. He had to come back. And she had to break free. Even if it meant tearing apart every law written in the stars. End of part 1. Wait for instruction before proceeding to part 2. The cell doors closed behind Elias with a hiss of finality. The walls were smooth crystal, soundproof, emotionless. But even in chains, his mind wasn't quiet. It echoed with the memory of her voice, the quiet courage in her defiance, and the way she looked at him. Not as a criminal, not as a guest, but as an equal. 2 guards stood at the threshold, stoic and silent. They didn't speak to him. They didn't need to. The sentence had already been passed: exile to the scorched moons. A place where exiles went to die slowly, forgotten and far from starlight. But Elias had escaped death before. He had stared it down in the vacuum of space, on war fronts lit by plasma storms, and in the eyes of generals who demanded his silence. What he hadn't survived, until now, was hope. Veilora had given him that, and he would not let it be stolen. In her chamber, far above the prison levels, Veilora stared at the ancient star maps carved into the floor. Each constellation told a story, a law, a warning. But none spoke of love. None spoke of rebellion. She pressed her palm to the window. The glass shimmered and responded to her royal genetic code, opening a small interface. She wasn't supposed to access it without permission. But she was done asking. Override security. Open relay to subterranean level 7, cell 34, she whispered. A moment of static, then his face appeared. Tired, bruised, but alive. I was wondering when you'd break the rules again, Elias said with a weak grin. Veilora almost smiled. I'm not going to let them take you. And what are you going to do? Storm the hangar? Bring down the matriarchy with a tiara and a glare. Her voice dropped. No, but I am going to take you with me. He blinked. Wait, you mean escape? She nodded. There's an old diplomatic corridor, abandoned since the war with the Velethus. I found it years ago. I thought of running, but I had no reason to. Until now. Veilora, if they catch you, then let them. But I won't let them cage us both. Not again. Not ever. And with that, the relay cut. The plan was set. That night, under the eclipse shadow of both moons, Veilora disguised herself in the robes of a lesser priestess and made her way to the lower levels. Every step echoed with the weight of risk. But her heart pounded not from fear, but from resolve. Meanwhile, Elias had already been prepping. He'd stolen a guard's retinal scan, during what he claimed was a clumsy stumble, and overridden the cell lock just enough to delay his escort. When she reached the corridor, he was already waiting. Took you long enough, Your Highness, he whispered. I was choosing the right robe to flee the galaxy in, she shot back. They ran. The passage was narrow, forgotten by the palace's grand expansion. Dust caked the controls. Ancient vines, some alien species introduced long ago for decor, crept along the walls. Their footfalls were muffled, their breathing quickened. Where does this lead? He asked. To the old starport hidden beneath the memorial gardens. The one built before we trusted outside allies. Elias whistled. Remind me to thank your paranoid ancestors. But just as they reached the final hatch, alarms screamed above. They found the cell empty, she whispered. Elias moved faster, slamming the override. The blast door hissed open, revealing a sleek, old shuttle covered in vines and dust, but functional. They sprinted inside. Get us off this rock, Veilora said, strapping in. With pleasure. The engines roared to life, ancient but willing. The ground beneath them shook as guards began flooding the garden levels. A bright searchlight beamed down as the shuttle lifted, illuminating the symbol of the House of Azara etched into the garden. And then they were gone. Stars swallowed them. Silence returned to the palace. For the first time in her life, Veilora saw the stars not as prison bars, but as possibilities. They drifted for hours before Elias activated stealth protocols and directed the ship toward the border rings. Uncharted territories where no law of the 12 systems reached. In the quiet of hyperspace, they sat side by side. You know they'll come for us, he said softly. Let them come. I'm not afraid. Not anymore. He looked at her. Not like a fugitive. Not like a broken thing. But like a flame that refused to die. Why me? He asked. Why risk everything for a human? She turned toward him. Because you're the only one who didn't see my worth through my womb. You saw me. And for the first time, I felt real. He didn't know what to say. So he took her hand. And in that silence, something unspoken bloomed between them. But the galaxy doesn't forget so easily. And a princess doesn't disappear without consequence. On the outer edge of the Telrava system, an Imperial dreadnought picked up a faint energy signature. A royal shuttle. Unauthorized. Trajectory, the ungoverned zones. The hunt had begun. End of part 2. Wait for instruction before proceeding to part 3. The stars outside the viewport twinkled like whispers of forgotten dreams. Inside the old royal shuttle, now cloaked and drifting near a rogue asteroid field, Elias and Veilora sat in the dim light of the command panel, hearts tethered to uncertainty, but burning with something stronger, resolve. They had made it far beyond the 12 systems, into the lawless gray where empires held no sway. Yet safety was fragile, and peace was borrowed time. They knew the Royal Armada would come. They just didn't know when. The ship's long-range sensors chimed softly. Elias tapped the screen, and his face hardened. "They've found us." Veolora stood behind him, her breath caught. The dreadnought loomed on the holographic display, massive, metallic, a floating empire of wrath. "We don't have the weapons to outrun or outfight them," Elias said grimly. "Then we speak," she said. "Speak? They won't listen. They will, because I am done hiding, and I still carry the voice of a princess, even if they try to silence it." Before Elias could protest, she was already activating the comms beacon. The screen flickered, then stabilized. Her mother appeared, clad in royal battle robes, her silver crown glowing with electric arcs. "Veolora," the matriarch said, voice like thunder. "You have dishonored your bloodline. You will surrender yourself and the human immediately." Veolora stood tall. "No, mother. I will not, because I am not property. I am not broken, and I am not yours to command." The matriarch's expression tightened. "I was taught my worth was tied to the life I could carry inside me. But Elias showed me that worth is not a womb, it's choice. It's heart. It's will. You speak like a rebel. No, I speak like a woman, and I refuse to let your shame dictate my destiny." The silence that followed was electric. Behind the matriarch, council members whispered, faces uncertain. The image of Veolora, once hidden, now unafraid, shattered centuries of imposed weakness. Elias stepped forward. "If you want to take her back, you'll have to do it over my body. But I warn you, humans don't break." Another long pause. Then the matriarch said something unexpected. "You leave us no choice." The transmission ended. Elias's hand hovered over the shuttle controls, ready to divert power to shields. But the dreadnought did not fire. Instead, it turned. Veolora blinked. What? What just happened?" A smaller ship detached from the dreadnought, a diplomatic cruiser, and quietly sent them a message. Status changed, exile revoked. Request for peace. ***. Back on Azara, people had seen the broadcast. Heard her words. For the first time, Royal had defied the chains of tradition in full view of the stars. And something shifted in the hearts of the people. They didn't want a perfect heir. They wanted a leader who felt, who bled, who fought for meaning. Weeks later, on a quiet moon lit by twin suns, Elias and Veolora stood hand in hand before a small group of exiles, freethinkers, and allies from distant worlds. There were no crowns, no grand declarations, just a simple vow to build something new, together, a haven where no being was judged by biology, but by the kindness of their spirit, a place where no child would be cast aside for being different. As they exchanged rings forged from the melted remnants of the shuttle's first failed engine, Veolora smiled. "You gave me freedom," she whispered. "You gave me purpose," Elias replied. And in that shared moment, they didn't just defy an empire. They began a future. Moral asterisk. True worth is not defined by what a person can produce, but by what they choose to become. Love, freedom, and dignity are not gifts granted by society. They are rights claimed by the brave. // End of story.